So here's one of those big questions. Why are we adopting internationally? I would like to say up front that the fact that I am adopting internationally is not a judgment statement on domestic adoption. We have cousins who have adopted domestically 6 times now, maybe 7. Oh my goodness. And we have some really good friends, in fact, the godparents of our children who have adopted domestically, and they have wonderful families, very nice transitions, great kids, and I fully support anyone's decision to adopt domestically. Sometimes people ask me, why did you choose to adopt from China? And it's really not the kind of question that I can answer while I'm standing in line at the grocery store. And if I meet you at a party, there's so much information, so much that went into making this decision. I just want to make sure that I don't misspeak. So now that I know I won't be interrupted, I'll go ahead and answer the question. Why did I adopt internationally? I will say that the very first thing that happened is that my husband Nicholas and I were talking about adoption in kind of a very vague way. We were going to adopt someday when a wonderful woman named Jeannie came up to me and said, "Have you ever considered adoption? Are you thinking maybe you could adopt?" She was looking for a family for a 13-year-old girl in China. And she had decided she was going to be this girl's advocate. She was going to go out there and make sure that this girl found a family before she was too old to be adopted. She was about to age out of the system in China. Now, I don't want to say that God brought Jeannie and me together, but we were in God's house, and I'm sure that He does some of His very best work there. So when she asked me about adopting that particular girl, I said, I don't think that that's the right match for me and my family. I mean, at the time I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and this girl was 13. Wouldn't she feel more like a babysitter in our family? But I wanted to know more about adoption. Jeannie had adopted 3 years before she had this conversation with me from China. And she said, "Yeah, I would love to talk to you about it." She sat down with me for like an hour and a half and talked about her experience. Then she invited me and my whole family over for a delicious dinner. She showed us videos from when she adopted her first daughter. And by the way, she did find a home for that 13-year-old girl. She convinced her husband that they were the right family to adopt her. And I watched her with her first daughter, and I watched her with her second daughter, and how smooth the transition was, how wonderfully the family blended together. We were living in Juneau, Alaska, and there were lots of families that had adopted from China. Some who had adopted from Russia, some who had adopted domestically, but there were so many from China. It may have been that I didn't realize which children were adopted from Russia. I mean, unless somebody says something to me, I might not have known that they were adopted. But I saw so many people having a great experience with China that we really continued to look into that. Jeannie and her family became our mentor family, and they were ready to guide us through the process. She told me about Holt International, and I looked into the adoption agency. They're a reputable agency. They've been in business for over 60 years. They are committed to the entire process, to making sure that they are doing the best that they can for everyone involved. In Korea, they have a home for unwed mothers, and it is not the purpose of this home to get the women to give up their children. The purpose is to give aid to the women. If they want to keep their babies, here's how you can keep your baby. If they want to give their baby up for adoption, here's how you can give your baby up for adoption. They have sponsorship programs where you can help a family to become self-sustaining so that they don't have to give their children up for adoption. And there's really wonderful ways that you can foster and sponsor a child so that they can stay in their birth family. But if a family decides that they want to give up their child, or if a child is found, then Holt is committed to finding a loving family and being supportive throughout the process, even after the adoption, for that child and their family. So we saw good things about Holt. Holt also works domestically. Now, at the time when we looked into Holt, the children that they had available domestically were older, and we didn't qualify to adopt those children. But that's a subject for another vlog. So we also looked into the foster care system in Juneau, Alaska. And one of the things that we found is that a lot of the children available there are Native Alaskans. And it is preferable that they are placed with Native Alaskan families. They want to encourage the Alaskan community to thrive, to stay together, and to get those cultural experiences from each other. And I can't say that that's a bad idea. I mean, 6 months after we finalized our adoption, we moved to Florida. So we would have been taking a Native Alaskan child away from their culture, away from that part of the community. So I can understand why they would prefer to place those children with Native Alaskan families. Now, after our adoption started, a very good friend of mine adopted domestically in Juneau, Alaska. She is not Native Alaskan. So if she had adopted earlier, she would have been my mentor. She was, she still is. She's a great friend of mine. And I think things might have been different. I might have said, here's a person who can guide me all the way through the adoption process, and someone whose adoption went well, and someone who has a wonderful family, and things might have been quite different. As they were, Jeannie and her family were my mentors, and there just never was anything that took me off of following them on that path. One of the things I will say, since you've listened long enough, I can get maybe to one of those juicy, controversial statements. When you adopt in the foster care system, sometimes the children are placed in your home before the adoption is final. And there's part of me that says that that is awesome. When I was matched with my daughter River, she lived in a foster family in China for months until we could finalize everything and we could take her home. If it had been a domestic situation, she could have been home with us that much longer, and that would have been awesome. But it is also really, really frightening. I think that the first time a child came into my home, that I would just totally accept them and love them and bond with them and everything would be peachy keen. If that child was, for whatever reason, sent with a biological family, matched with a different family, for whatever reason that fell through, I would be heartbroken. And my husband and my other children would be heartbroken. And when we got a new foster child, I think our hearts would be guarded, and it would be difficult to totally open up our hearts and bond with that new child. And sure, a year later, the adoption might be final and we'd go, oh, well, now I can relax. Now we can bond. Well, now a crucial period of time has passed, and that is not going to be good for any of us. Now, I could be wrong. I'm only guessing at how I would feel and how I would act, and that the first child would be in a situation where it didn't work out. It was just reassuring to us that when we went to China and we met our daughter, it was going to be final. Nobody was ever going to take her away from us. Nothing was ever going to change. That we didn't have to worry about that anxiety-filled portion of time. And I'm not saying that that's not in the best interest of the child. I think it's wonderful that my friend was able to have her son for so long before the adoption could all get worked out and be finalized. But I think I feel that way because it was finalized. It was like a fairy tale ending, you know? So now that I am in Florida and I am adopting for the second time, we've decided to have another international adoption because we already have one child from China, and we think that it would be nice for her to have someone that she can relate to on a cultural level, someone who looks like her. And from our point of view, we already know what China expects. We already know that China will accept our application. We already know the process, and that makes us feel more comfortable with proceeding with an adoption from China. So while I don't have any issue with somebody who says that they're interested in adopting from China and then India and then Ethiopia and then the United States, there are families that are called rainbow families. I think that that's a beautiful family. The same way that I think it is a beautiful family if you only adopt domestically. For us, I think it's neat that we can focus specifically on Chinese culture. We're going to have Chinese New Year, and maybe it won't be such a daunting task to me to try and include the culture from another country. Plus, I'm a Polak. I gotta include all the Polish sausage and Polish holidays that are out there. I don't know, we eat pierogies. So that is my answer to the question, why are you adopting internationally? I hope that I haven't misspoken, misrepresented myself. I want you to remind you that I don't speak for all families who are adopting internationally, and to remind you that all adoption is wonderful. Sometimes I do feel a little bit judged when people ask me, why didn't you adopt from the United States? And I don't think there's anything wrong with adopting from a reputable agency in an ethical way. And I'm the mom, so you have to listen to me.